Alright, we just got finished importing this table into the RVT file, but we don't have a lot of things we can do with the table. So I'm going to show you now how to set up some parameters for the table. So let's look at our reference level first. And we have some locked constraints, but I'm going to start naming these things, and that's what makes them parameters. So the first thing I'm going to name is I'm going to create an annotation that goes from the table width reference plane to the default left-right reference plane, and I'm going to place that dimension. And I'm going to do the same in the table width length direction. Both of these dimensions I want to become parameters. So when you create a parameter, it becomes something that you can change in the either type or instances of the family. So right now we have no parameters. If you click on the down arrow next to label and hit add parameter, I'm going to change this dimension to table width parameter. When you name a parameter, you can't have spaces, so I use upper and lower cases and use an uppercase letter for each new word to help me read the label a little bit better. This should be a type parameter, and you'll see why once I actually start to use this table. Notice that these things are grayed out. Common, length, and dimensions I could change, but I want to keep that as dimensions. The reason the common and length are grayed out is we started with a dimension as an object that we selected and created a new parameter. If we hit new parameter first and then created the parameter, we might have to define what it is that we want that parameter to function as, but in this case it already knew that we were making this a common length, so we didn't have to change that. Now I'm going to keep this at type and hit OK, and you're going to see that the dimension here changes from table width equals 3 feet, and that parameter is listed over here as a parameter we can control now under our family type. So we have table width. So let's do the same thing. We're going to select this one, add another parameter and call that table length. Also keep that as a type parameter, and just by making that one single change before we upload it, we're going to test it. So what I want to test is make sure that these legs move correctly if I change the width or the length. So let's make this 4 feet by 4 feet and apply, and things seem to be working properly. So I'm going to set that to 3 feet by 3 feet again. And the other thing I'm going to do, because I want to be able to try these things out without having to keep changing 2 parameters at a time, I'm going to create a new type. So this first type is going to be coffee table 3 feet by 3 feet. And then I'm going to create a new type called coffee table 3 feet by 5 feet. So with that new type, let's change the length to 5 feet. Apply. So now I have coffee table 3 feet by 5 feet and coffee table 3 feet by 3 feet. And when I hit apply, I just have to switch these, and then I don't have to retype both parameters. Okay. So we also have now when we load this family into the file, into the Revit file, it's going to come with these 2 size options already built for us. Okay, so that's also to our advantage. So let's hit OK here and load this into the project. It's going to ask if we want to overwrite the existing version. I do in this case. And watch what happens now when I select our simple table. I have 2 choices. I have a 3 foot by 3 foot table, or I have the 3 foot by 5 foot table, and it switches automatically for me, just like that. Okay. The other thing I can do is I can change and create a new table size, and I can do that by selecting Edit Type, and there's the length and width dimensions there. All I need to do is duplicate this. Let's make a coffee table that's 2 feet by 8 feet for instance. Okay, so I'd change the length to 8 feet, change the width to 2 feet, hit OK, and now I have a brand new coffee table. So 3 feet by 3 feet, 3 feet by 5 feet, and I've got 2 feet by 8 feet. Recognize that I can't make those changes without changing the type. So that's why these two things are called a type parameter, because I've got to change the type. Now we're going to do an example of an instance parameter with the same table. So let's go back to the RFA file. Whoops. So view and switch to the RFA file, the SimpleTable file, and I want to create parameters, for instance, that control the overhang on the table and maybe the size of the table legs. So right now I have just basic dimensions that are controlling that, but if I switch those to parameters as well, these dimensions on the outside will become the table overhang parameter. So I'm going to hit add parameter and then say table overhang. And I'm going to switch it to an instance instead of a type, and you'll see how that will function. So it now says table overhang 2 inches, and I want to lock that. I want all of these locked, actually. There we go. So I want these others to be the same. I don't need to retype that all at this point. I already have the parameter defined. I just need to select all of those dimensions, and I can select them even at the same time. So those are the ones I want to change to table overhang. And they'll immediately become locked because I can only have a parameter locked or unlocked, and every other object that has that same parameter setting, it's going to be set in one place. If I unlock it here, all of them unlock. If I lock it here, all of them lock. I also want to set this parameter to table or leg width. So let's set that to leg width, make that an instance, and then we would select the other 3 remaining and switch those to leg width. So now let's see what happens. Let me switch that to 1 inch equals a foot so you can see all the parameters now that we have. So now we're going to see what happens when we upload this to the RVT file. I'm going to save it, load into project, overwrite the existing version, and when we look at the 3D file, there's our table. I'm going to make a copy of this table this time so you can see the difference between a type and an instance parameter. So I'm going to switch this type to 3 feet by 3 feet. I'll make a copy of that one too. And let's imagine that we want this table to remain 3 feet by 3 feet with all the legs and the overhang at the 2-inch defaults. But this table, I want to change it. Notice I have leg width and table overhang showing up here. I don't have to go into edit type to change those. And watch what happens to these 2 tables, which are of the same type. Watch what happens to one and the other. So I'm going to change the table leg width to 3, and I'm going to change the table overhang to 4 and hit apply. This is the only table that was affected. This one remained the same because we're changing the instance. The instance is that selected table. We're changing those 2 values. So this is an instance parameter. These are type parameters. And you can tell by this example that sometimes you're going to want things to be an instance parameter, and sometimes you're going to want things to be a type parameter. Now the last thing that I'd like to be able to do is change the type so that I could change the height. So I'm going to go back to the family file. I'm going to go to one of the side views, and I want to set a dimension from the reference to the top of the table, and I want that to become a new parameter. This will become table height, and this should be a type parameter. I'm going to hit save and then load this into the project, overwrite the existing versions, and then when I go to the 3D view, we should have for every single table now, if I go to edit type, we have height now as an option for something we can edit in the type. Okay, so I want to create a new table type. Edit type, duplicate it, and I want to change this from coffee table to dining table. This is what dining table height would be, maybe 29 inches, whereas coffee table height is 18 inches. I want this table to remain 2 feet by 8 feet, however, so I'm going to leave that as the dining table 2 feet by 8 feet and change the height here to 29 inches. Now I have a dining table version, and if I wanted to load another component, I could grab the coffee table version of the 2 foot by 8 foot, and we can see them side by side and see their changes in height. Okay, so there's coffee table, dining table, and then I could select this one, copy it, do the same, edit type, duplicate it, rename that dining. But I want it dining 4 feet by 4 feet. So I would change this to 29 inches, change this to 4, change that to 4, hit OK, and now I've got a dining table that's 4 feet by 4 feet. And that's how families work, and that's how we can create multiple families within an RFA file that we import. There's all of these different table sizes and choices. I could go back to my RFA file and create them here and save them, and so they come in automatically with those sizes, or I can create them on the fly when I define them in the RVT file.